All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Alexander Creek. You're listening to or watching Clairvoyant Conversations. I am an intuitive, medium, numerologist, astrologer, general cosmic explorer. And I have my very first guest on today, at least of this video variety. My guest is Ari Nicole. She's a psychic medium in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and she's also a dear friend of mine. So if you are... let's all welcome my friend Ari. Ari, welcome! Yay! Thanks for coming on.
Yay. Thanks for having me.
Yes. I guess I want to ask you all sorts of stuff. So Ari and I met when we were kind of both just sort of starting out, basically, at kind of a very pivotal kind of time in our sort of psychic development. And like any skill, it's nice to have people that do the same thing that you do and that you can sort of bounce off ideas. So Ari, let's talk about, I guess, tell us who you are beyond just a psychic medium. Let's talk about like where you're from, your family, your hobbies. Ari is a filmmaker as well. So I guess just kind of introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so I'm always so used to saying like, hi, my name's Ari Nicole and I'm a psychic medium, but like to describe myself beyond that, I'm like, I come from a family of, I have 3 biological brothers, a half brother, 2 stepsisters, and a stepbrother. So I have a lot of siblings. My parents are both divorced, and I grew up predominantly Catholic. And so there really wasn't a whole lot of encouragement is beyond like within like the paranormal psychic arts, but I've always been drawn to that. So it was interesting when I finally started coming out saying that, oh, hey, by the way, I'm psychic. And
I bet that went over really well.
Oh yeah, my mom's like, okay, so people who are super Catholic and take Catholicism very seriously, I like to call them Catholics. And
yes, I am familiar.
And my mom is like a massive Catholic. So I was very concerned as far as like how she was going to take the news that, oh, hey, this is what I do. She didn't really react at first. And then later she told me that she had to talk to some other friends of hers that she considers to be like her mentors within like the Catholic Church. And they said it was fine. So therefore she's okay with it.
Okay. All right. Well, however you get
like,
your green light, like whatever.
I know. And I couldn't understand like, well, why couldn't you just search inside yourself to understand if it was right or wrong? So
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But that's besides the point. But outside of what I do as a psychic medium, I guess my day job or survival job is I am a analyst at a bank, and it has a more technical title, like a portfolio analyst. But I don't really do anything with portfolios. Hang on.
Sure.
So basically, I do a lot of data. I do a lot of math. I'm doing a lot of kind of like number crunching. And so that's the complete opposite spectrum of, being a psychic, because, psychic, you're not, your head's kind of like up in the clouds and in the stars, but like with being an analyst, it's very grounded and it's very, very like tangible stuff. So that's my day job. And then the other thing I do, like you'd mentioned before, is I'm also a filmmaker. So my husband is a writer and director, and he predominantly writes and directs horror movies. So I am very involved in the horror movie genre, which is something that I, in my wildest dreams, don't think that I would have ever involved myself in horror. Ever. I remember when I first met him, I was very concerned, like, am I gonna like die here?
Totally. Am I gonna be the last girl standing in this horror movie? I don't know. Yeah.
So because he has his office is covered in dripping blood. He has disgusting figures all over the place. And like when I first met him, I'm just like, am I going to make it out of here alive? Because this place looks really creepy. But then you find out that the addiction to horror movies, and I'm not talking like addiction in like a bad way, but the draw of it is because people who really enjoy horror enjoy having kind of like a roller coaster experience, but in the safety of their home or in a theater. And so it's chasing that high of being scared and being thrilled at this, all at the same time. So it's kind of where what the horror kind of is. How I fit into it is he brings me on as like an assistant director or as a producer, predominantly producing, and that title and those skills are very much they're not really tangible in the independent film world, because I can say, oh, I'm a producer, and people usually think, oh, well, the producers are the ones that have the money that fund the project.
Mm-hmm.
In bigger box theaters, or not theaters, but bigger box productions, that would be correct. But for independent, it's more, I'm helping with finding the locations, I'm helping with finding the actors, I'm helping with the set design, I'm helping with, the makeup, I'm helping with costumes, I'm helping with just the acquisition of the extras.
You're doing wrangling. You're like wrangling everything is kind of how I see it.
Yeah. Everything that occurs in a scene is because I had some sort of hand on that. So
cool.
So that's
awesome.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's funny because I, for some reason, always thought like, oh, you must like horror movies. Like I just never, I didn't understand that it was something you kind of just fell into. Cause it's funny because like you could say like being a psychic medium kind of falls in that general kind of paranormal kind of territory, which is funny. You know what I mean? So anyway, okay, cool. So you have a quite a varied resume, as it were. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So, which I have always loved, because I, myself, I'm kind of I really resist like just being interested in spiritual things. To me, that's insufferably boring. You know what I mean? Like my whole life is that, but at the same time, I'm interested in some pop culture, in some movies, and some television. So, yeah. I mean, it's not that I'm the most interesting person. I mean, I am currently rewatching the entire Sex and the City series. I've seen it about 6 times. It's just ultimate comfort food for like being in a pandemic. Also, I'm like, oh, I literally know what's going to happen, and I still cry at certain scenes.
Yeah.
So
I am on probably my 5th or 6th rewatch of The Office.
Okay. Yes. Absolutely.
So I totally understand. And I also, and I also do a lot of knitting too. So that kind of helps with being productive and creative and passing the time.
So you aren't just constantly talking to dead people. It's kind of something I want people to understand.
Oh, am I?
I mean, it seems like you're not constantly like in the world all the time.
No. Sometimes it catches me off guard though, but sometimes, but for the most part, I don't get bothered. So.
Okay, cool. Well, okay. So tell me how you first kind of discovered your abilities, basically, and also define how you define psychic and medium, because that's this hyphenated kind of thing. And is there a difference between those two things?
I'm going to start out with the definition, and then what was the second part of the question, or the first part of the question?
Basically, how did you discover them?
Okay.
That you were those things. Was it something that you always knew, or was it just something that you kind of found out?
Yeah. Sorry, and I get a little bit of ADD when it comes to answering questions. Like I'll be in the middle of answering a question, and then I'll completely forget what the question was. So
same. You're in good hands. This conversation is gonna go like this, and then maybe do this. So like literally whatever. Yeah.
Perfect. What I tell my clients is that I am a psychic medium. A psychic is somebody who helps you connect with with the wisdom of your higher self, your angels, and your spirit guides to bring you messages about your past, present, future, and distant future. I'm also a medium, and a medium is someone who is able to channel messages from your loved ones that have crossed over. And so because I'm an overachiever, I do both.
Awesome.
So that's my pitch.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just kind of how I briefly describe it. So, because I think people kind of get confused between which is it between the two. And so, like I was at a psychic fair in Canada, and I'm doing readings for people, and I would ask, do you want a psychic reading or a mediumship reading? And they're like, what's the difference? And I'm like, we're in a fucking psychic fair.
Totally.
This is different if I was at like a farmer's market, you know, or
right,
like somewhere
right.
that what didn't make sense, but like
Yeah.
you were literally here because of psychic stuff. So
right.
it was just so funny to me that so many people ask that question. So that's my spiel, but how I discovered it. So it kind of goes back to when I was younger. And it's not like when I was younger, I thought, like when I was having these experiences, I was thinking like, oh, that must mean I'm psychic. But it was more like I would have experiences where I would have dreams about the future. Or I would get feelings about things that were about to happen, and then they would happen. And it was kind of like more than just coincidence for me anyways. And so it was, as I got older, piecing those scenarios together, that's when I kind of realized like, oh, I'm kind of like really open and really intuitive. So maybe I should try and develop this.
Yes.
And then not only that, but like I was also very interested in the occult, in Wiccan, you know, very, very like into like the nature and Mother Earth, and just really kind of exposing myself to those elements. And that didn't happen until I was like a teenager. I'm not saying like I was, you know, drawing upside down crosses or, you know, doing kind of rituals and stuff like that.
Totally.
But I was definitely like researching what it meant to be a Wiccan, what it meant to be spiritual at, you know, at that age. And then it wasn't until I turned away from all of that when I was in my 20s, because I was a psychology major, and as a psychology major, most scientists are atheist. And so it wasn't that I felt that I needed to be atheist. I felt that there was no founded proof on a lot of this stuff. And but it wasn't until I got into my 30s that a little switch went off, and it was just like, but why are you having all of these experiences? Because I was having visions. Yeah. Like full, like, hopefully some people watching this will know the TV show That's So Raven.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. That was my life in my 20s.
Wow.
And that was.
So like the full on.
Yeah.
Cool.
Where like it zooms into her eye.
Right. Totally.
Get off the vision or whatever. That was literally my life in my 20s when I was in college. And that's what made it so hard for me as a psych student to really believe that there wasn't these abilities or this possibility. So it was, so when I was in my 30s, when I turned 30, I was at a job that I absolutely hated. My boss was terrible. I was feeling like I kept hitting brick walls everywhere that I went. And I remembered that things used to be so much easier for me from a standpoint of like, if I could intuitively know what clothes to wear for the day, and it would serve me in a better way for that day. I intuitively knew like what I was supposed to eat, how I was supposed to act. And it was almost like I had lost that connection, and I was feeling just so frustrated and stunted as far as, you know, being connected to everything. I missed having that ongoing connection with spirit. And then finally,
that's more of a natural state of being for everybody as well. Yeah. Not just for, you know, not just if you're a little extra psychic, like that's everyone. I think that's kind of the way everyone might naturally better operate. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. And so feeling that frustration on a consistent basis and always hitting those brick walls really got to me. And so I kind of told myself, I'm like, okay, like, how can I know what's coming up for me? Like, I started seeking out, well, maybe I just need a psychic reading. And I'd never received a psychic reading in my life beyond, like, I think a friend of mine in high school had pulled tarot cards for me. And so finally I was just like, you know what? Why am I seeking this out? Why don't I just learn to do it for myself? So it was kind of like, I just kind of threw up my hands and just said, okay, this is it. This is all or nothing. I'm going in. And if nothing comes out of it, and if it's all a bunch of bullshit, then I know. So
then I guess you tried, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I found it so that was in 2012. 2013, I took at the beginning of 2013, I took an intuition development class. And then later in 2013, I met you.
Mm-hmm. That was that year?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And I guess the rest is kind of like, I wouldn't say the rest is history because I've had more development in different classes with different teachers. But it was kind of like, this is something that I did not waste my time on. I really get a lot of value out of it. Mm-hmm. And even if, and I say this to people anyways, but I say, even if all of this is bullshit, even if this is fake and there's no scientific way of proving it, or there's no way of proving it or anything like that, as long as the person receiving the reading gets something out of it and mm-hmm. feels healed and feels better and is able mm-hmm. to move forward with their life, then I think there is value in, having those readings where you sit down with an individual and, they channel information from, their imagined source or whatever. But like, as long as someone's getting something of value out of it and it's improving their life going forward, then I think it's all worth it in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Well, and, at this point, there are like so many details that like, I would have no idea of knowing how I got that information. And same with you. And it happens like every time I do a reading, Same. So, Same. And it's like, it's not as shocking anymore, but I'm still like, always like, holy shit, like every time. That's why it's fun. I think that's why I love doing it. It's because you feel so plugged into a source of energy that's bigger than just this like very small version of you, Yep. And it's like, and I always say too, like, it's like any skill, you have to practice it. It's like, I think that there's maybe this idea that people are just sort of born like this sort of superhuman and that they just, and I'm like,
no,
like it is something that you have to access and practice. And like, it is like a talent and skill. So like some people are kind of naturally just kind of better at it, at least initially, but it is like anything else where you can practice and develop it. So, and Chris, for me too, like the first time, I was always really, really drawn to all of this ever since I was very little. And I took like a little, like, I don't know, $5 maybe of this. I took this like $5 intuition development workshop, and like, we had to hold objects and that like belonged to someone else, and someone's grandmother came through. Yes, absolutely. That's called psychometry. And I teach that now as well too, whenever I do like a little in-person thing, because it's like the easiest way, I think, for people to kind of access their own stuff is when you just kind of shut up, be quiet, and start blurting out, basically. I always say like breathe and blurt the information, but that's when I kind of brought through someone's grandmother, and I was like feeling all the emotion and like crying, and I was like, what the hell is going on? So anyway, so what were we talking about, Ari? We were talking about we were talking about you first discovering kind of how you okay. So so you have some professional training as well. So you're not just self-taught. And so tell us, I guess, about your professional training, how you ended up in Canada, about this whole thing.
Yeah, I'm like an international. I'm super international. So my first class that I took for intuition development, and I highly recommend this for absolutely anybody. It doesn't require any particular skill level. It doesn't require any particular like previous knowledge of thinking that you have intuitive ability. It's the class is called Mindscape, and it's offered through the International Body Talk Association. It's usually about a $600 to $700 investment, which I think is actually pretty cheap as far as most intuition development classes go. And it's a 2.5 day long course, which is usually held over a weekend. And you go through the steps of learning how to meditate on your own to connect to your intuition. And then you build a workshop, a mental workshop. You build all these tools and things that help you to better visualize basically whoever it is that you're trying to tune into. And it's the value of that course is just insurmountable. My friend William Dale, who's also another psychic.
I love William. I know William. He's great. Yeah. I actually want to bring him on here. I haven't told him yet, but I really want to bring him on
here. Yeah. He'll be great.
Yeah.
I convinced him to take the class with me. And I was so nervous that he wasn't going to like it because Mindscape is so close to my heart because it was literally my first class. And after the weekend, he has this like special way of saying wow and knowing that like he's so like in love with something.
Yes,
like,
totally.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, he could not stop like just singing its praises. And I was like, thank God, because it would have I wouldn't have broke my heart. I would have understood if it wasn't for him.
Totally.
But like,
totally.
He's like, it has increased his game so much. Like he's like, there's so many different ways you can use it. And he's like, it's actually made my readings better. And
awesome.
And what Mindscape does is that it doesn't, they're not talking about psychic development. They're not talking about.
They don't call it that, right? At all.
No, they call it intuition development.
Yeah.
So, and that's the beautiful part about it is that anybody can take it. It doesn't matter if you believe in it or not. They're not saying you have to drink Kool-Aid and you have to be psychic or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just saying, let's help you relax enough so you can tap into your intuition that everybody has. Because I mean, like in business, you talk about, I had a gut feeling about that person. Moms have that mom sense, like we talk about intuition in our everyday life outside of, the regular, just like woo-woo stuff that I don't even think people realize that they're saying it. And so that's kind of what Mindscape is.
What's an easy way? Can I interrupt you really quick? How do people, if they didn't want to take like this whole program or course, like how can people tune into their own intuition? Like what is your kind of like go-to, like for the average person, like how would they tune into that?
So, first of all, I recommend that if you're in a place of fear or anger or frustration, trying to immediately tune into any sort of intuition is not going to be beneficial for you. You are not going to get any kind of results or good results, or you're basically going to get mixed messages. And so I highly recommend that if you're in a state of crisis, to give yourself some time to kind of like calm down from that before tuning into what it is that you want an answer about. But what I recommend is find a place where it's quiet. You can be undisturbed for a length of time, whether that's 15 minutes or an hour. It just depends on how you want to use your time. And then I recommend just kind of closing your eyes, taking a few deep breaths, visualize the colors of the rainbow, starting with the color red. You go red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, violet. And once you visualize those colors, then put yourself in a place in nature. It doesn't have to matter where in nature, just someplace in nature. And then once you're comfortable and you're in your nature spot, call in the people that it is that you want to communicate with, whether it's conflict resolution, call in a person that would be the best one to help you with answering the questions that you need answered.
And this is all in your mind. The nature spot is all in your mind. Calling in the people is all in your mind, basically.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And it's just basically finding a place to calm down enough that you can connect with that energy of your higher self. And don't question and don't give it labels as far as like who this person is or what this thing is or what does it all mean. Just observe it, write it down, thank it. And then once you're out of that set space, then you can go crazy and kind of interpret everything that you saw. But in the moment, it's so vitally crucial to not be like, oh, I think that spirit's male, or I think that spirit's female, or I think my guide's, a magician or whatever. Like, don't try and give it the label, just accept it for what it is, because that's how spirit presents itself to you, is in a very pure form. So,
so don't analyze it right away. Like, just sort of receive, basically.
Yes, just receive it. And it's going to be so hard to not want to interpret it because our human brain wants to label everything.
Yes.
Because that's how we make sense of the world around us. And that's one thing that I learned with my psychic development, is that if I try and label everything, then I am not even close to getting the messages right. But if I just accept what's being shown to me, the messages are so much clearer. And I don't know if that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think it makes sense to you and I.
Yes.
But for someone who's trying to develop their skill, it's hard to not let your ego take over.
It's like the way I usually like to teach it too is like, try to keep, it's like, I mean, I try to teach techniques that kind of help you bypass the analyzing part of your brain anyway. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Like keeping your brain busy enough, your brain's sort of busy enough so it's not interfering with analyzing what's being seen. Because whenever I teach intuition development, I'm like, okay, let's, I'm like, set our intention. I always have them ground, run their energy, like kind of be like very much like being in this sort of like peaceful, sort of neutral place. And then, so for example, you would say your full name 3 times, right? And then whatever symbol I start seeing immediately, you don't judge it, right? So I'm like, oh, I'm seeing like yesterday, I saw a client as being this big red tornado, right? And I was like, oh, and I know now, like, to just blurt it out, right? Because that probably means something to the client if I'm seeing that. And I just felt like this instability, kind of fear energy, and they totally resonated with what I was seeing right away. And that was pretty much the reason that they wanted reading was, and that's going to be like that first kind of symbol that you are seeing, the first thing that you're feeling. Like if there's like, if my client sort of says their name 3 times and I start hearing a song in my head immediately, like the lyrics of that song that I'm hearing are like for a reason. You just don't want to question like the magic of it, and it always, and to me, people are always like, oh, kind of feels like I'm just making shit up. And I'm like, that's kind of how it feels at first. That's kind of how it feels at first, like, but when you just kind of spit it out, you don't realize how relevant it is to the person.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like, I can't tell you how many times that I've had just the most random things happen. And I find that it's so much easier if I just tell them exactly what I'm seeing. And I always preface it with, this is gonna sound crazy, but this is what I'm seeing.
Totally. Yeah, totally. This is gonna sound really weird, but this is what I'm getting.
Right. And they're like, oh no, that makes total sense. And I'm like, why does that make sense?
Totally. Like, I even remember like reading someone was just asking about their kids, and I saw her little girl was like breathing dragon fire and then seeing this dragon around her. And I was like, I feel like she's like channeling dragon energy, or just like there's a thing with dragon, I feel like. And she's like, well, number one, she's a huge temper, right? And it's like, I want this now. And then her favorite animal is a dragon, right? So like just stuff like that. You just have no idea. So I love it. This by the way, everybody, this is like what we typically, Ari and I like will like dork out about this stuff. this call. Like,
I'm like, nerd out.
Yeah. Okay. So speaking on kind of nerding out, I guess, do you have like a couple favorite stories, like from client sessions or just even from your own life, where it was like, oh, that was like a really psychic moment. That's pretty cool. Or like any kind of standout kind of anecdotes.
Yeah, there's a few that I always retell just because I feel like it gives people hope that their loved ones are with them at all times. And so, and not only that, but they're working very hard on the other side with passing messages along or trying to get your life kind of lined up perfectly to have a moment. So this is the story of Presley. It was during so I have a client that I see on a pretty regular basis, and she has 3 daughters, and 2 of them are teenagers and one of them's like a toddler. And so when I was at her house doing a reading afterwards, we were just talking, and she's like, "Oh, this friend of mine, or this, my daughter's best friend just died not that long ago, and it was just, super tragic. She was just, her and her dad just got home from, getting dinner, and she was in the kitchen, getting like plates and stuff like that. And he was in the, the dining room getting the table, situated. And all of a sudden he heard a thud, and he goes into the kitchen, and she's gone like that fast. And she was like 14. So super tragic, super quick. And so that was in June. In July, August, and September, I kept having this teenage girl approach me, like in spirit, kind of like knocking on my window, bothering me constantly, saying like, you need to tell my parents that I'm okay. Like, you have to tell my parents that I'm okay. And at the time, there was an accident that had happened over the summer where a teenage girl got hit by, it was like a hit and run, but it was on the interstate. And so she didn't initially die, but she was like, I think she's in a coma. And to this day, I don't even know what happened to her, but I thought it was her spirit, to be honest. So I basically just kept telling the spirit, I'm like, look, you need to make it happen so that I can have a session with one or both of your parents. Okay. And I don't care how you do it.
So you aren't like the crazy lady in the grocery store that's like, I have a message for you. Like, it has to be through like an appropriate channel. So
yeah, it has to be appropriate. Like, they have to set an appointment. She has to make it legit. Like, she just can't put them in front of me at any place in time. So the spirit was like, okay, fine. But she would still like come to me and like be so frantic that she wants me to talk to her parents. And I tell her the same thing. I'm like, I can't. You have to bring them to me. So I had started this program called Mediumship Mondays, where the first Monday of the month, I would go to the sanctuary, which is like kind of like an office here in Sioux Falls where people will get like body talk sessions or Reiki sessions or whatever. And so the first Monday of the month is when I would have these open mediumship sessions. So my first one was pretty successful. A lot of people coming in. Second one, same thing. But my third one was in October. And I'm sitting there, we're waiting. And this woman walks in. She has like this big old 32-ounce big gulp from like the Get and Go. And
totally.
kind of like acted like she just kind of like wandered in. And this isn't like a building that you can just like wander into. Like, there's like offices and stuff. Like, you have to be intentional about where you're going. And so she kind of wanders in, and we're like, oh, hey, are you here for the mediumship thing? And she's like, I don't know, I guess so. Like, she's like, I thought this, like, my friend told me that this was canceled. Yeah. It's like, she thought it was canceled. And we're like, no, this was going on. And then my friend Tracy, he's like, oh, do you mean the meetup? Because he's like, I scheduled the meetup, but that was canceled. So I don't understand like how you could have even seen the meetup, because the meetup was never like published. And she's like, no, I don't know. But she's like, I'm here. She's just kind of like, whatever.
Yeah.
So, like lackadaisical, just kind of like about the whole thing. So I'm like, all right, more power to you, lady. Because to just wander into a mediumship thing, like, what are the fucking chances? So then a few seconds later, my best friend's dad is walking down the hallway past the opening of the sanctuary. And I'm like, Roy, what are you doing here? And he's like, oh, I'm here for this. So I'm like, this is bizarre, because he's, again, super Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea he was going to be into mediumship stuff, and here he is. And he's like, well, Sarah said that she couldn't be here for this, but so she asked if I would come and support you. I'm like, oh, that's so nice. Thanks for coming. So I do the readings. I do the readings for the woman. I channel in her daughter that passed away, and super emotional. Lots of releasing, all that stuff, and then it was really good for her. And then I channel Roy, because I always do guests first, family second.
Right. Yeah.
That's always how I do it.
Yeah.
And so then I channeled, everything for Roy, and he liked it. He had good experience. So then he's like, well, I gotta go. Gotta work early tomorrow. So he takes off. So I'm talking now with the woman, and I'm like, so can you tell me more about the circumstances of your daughter's passing? Because when the daughter came to me, she was very ashamed. And typically when a spirit comes to me when they're ashamed, I usually think it's suicide, because 9 times out of 10, they're ashamed for the choice that they made, and they're embarrassed. And she says, no, it wasn't suicide. She had a heart condition that she had to kind of like self-monitor. And so if she's ever started to feel sick, she was supposed to tell, myself or her dad, that she wasn't feeling well, so we could get her to the hospital and get her checked out or whatever. So I'm like, oh, that makes sense. That she's embarrassed that she didn't say something about how she was feeling. So as I'm talking to this mom, she reveals how she passed. She said, well, my husband and I, we're divorced, and she was at her dad's house. They gotten food. He was setting up the table. She was in the kitchen. She collapsed and died or whatever. And I'm just like, oh my God, do you know this person? And I said the name of the mom of the best friend of the girl. And she's like, no, I don't know who that is. I'm like, I thought that was kind of weird. And I was like, okay, well, do you know who this person is? And she goes, yes, that's Presley's best friend in the whole world. Like, they are super close. And I'm just like, what the fuck? So this little Presley. So then I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. This was the girl that had been, pestering me for the last 4 months, trying to get me to talk to her parents. And then I said, and then we were talking about something else, and I mentioned, well, Roy said blah, blah, blah. And she goes, Roy wasn't here. I'm like, well, who's Roy? And she's like, Roy's my ex-husband. And I'm like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. So she got her mom to come in for an open mediumship event, and someone named Roy, but it was the wrong Roy.
Wow. That's really weird. That's
right?
so weird. Yeah, totally. That's
so
bizarre.
Fucked up.
Yeah.
And so I tell her story constantly, because I cannot stress enough just how crazy your loved ones are working for you on the other side. Like, they have nothing but your best intentions at heart. They want nothing but the best for you. There is no room for them to even feel upset with you about life choices. There's no room for them to feel any anger, frustration, or whatever. Like, those emotions don't even exist. And it's so hard for us as ego-based individuals to know that we are completely forgiven and completely loved no matter what. Like, that's a hard concept for a lot of us who struggle with guilt and stuff like that. And with spirit, and especially with your loved ones, there's nothing but pure love. And they want nothing but the best for you, and they are going to work their asses off to make shit like that happen.
I don't know about you, but I always feel like whenever I can always feel like my heart chakra gets super activated, and I get really emotional whenever the spirit is like, oh, I love you so much, right? Like, I just feel this huge, oh my God, they just really love you. I don't get emotional. I don't get emotional until that happens, and I can just feel, it just feels like this kind of surge through my heart. And then also at that moment too, I know I'm really linked up with that spirit, if that makes sense too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, good story, by the way. I always love that one. I want to know, and I don't know what time we're at, but I want to ask you at least this question. So how can people work with their spirit guides? And so number one, what is a spirit guide? And also, what's kind of like a little exercise that people could maybe work with their spirit guides a little bit more? Because people are always asking me that, and I want to know your take on it.
Okay. I think people have different interpretations of what a spirit guide is versus what a guardian angel is. And I like to clarify the two. Your spirit guide is a spirit that has incarnated on earth many lifetimes, and they are no longer incarnating on earth anymore. They are now basically your best friend in spirit through your entire life. They are the one that guides you through everything. Sometimes they're the little voice in your head, and sometimes they're not, because they are always here to teach you and to guide you no matter what. They have nothing but pure love for you and want nothing but the best of you. So again, those lower emotions of disappointment, frustration, anger, like that isn't even like on the books for them. So so your spirit guide is usually the one, I want to say person, but it's the one spiritual entity that's with you for your entire life. A guardian angel, angels are people, I shouldn't say people, but like spirits that have never incarnated on earth and want nothing but the best of the best for everything and everyone at all times. I think that you have probably more, a different variety of those angels around you at all times, but I don't know if there's like one that's like with you all the time. At least when it comes to your spirit guide. Now there are other categories of spirit guides where they're teacher guides, helper guides, runner guides, all that. And those guides those are specific to those categories of like helping and getting things for you. And so my favorite exercise is, and it's so silly, but it's awesome. So to know that your spirit guides are working for you and helping you is you ask them to do things for you. And I'm not talking like, give me $1 million, nothing,
for sure.
Nothing so out of this world, because if it's not your life path.
Yeah. And you have to be in alignment and really feel like that you can receive that $1 million, but you can manifest $1 million anyway. So anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Right. Yeah. And if it's not your life path to ever have $1 million, you're never going to win the lottery. So
yeah, I agree.
Let's get that out of the way. That's why, anyways, so with my favorite exercise is when I get into my car and I'm going to go somewhere, I just say, okay, spirit guides, please give me a parking spot at the front of the parking lot when I go to the grocery store. Please go ahead and make this spot available for me. Thank you. Like, I thank them, bless them, whatever. And then when I go to the grocery store, there will be a parking spot up front where I ask. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. And it almost never fails. And that's just like a way to kind of not test them, but to make sure that you're communicating with them.
Right.
And so always remember to thank your guides anytime that they do something for you. So if they give you what you ask for, then then basically it's like, oh, thank you so much for giving me this parking spot. I love you so much. Thank you for all the hard work that you did to make this happen. So it's acknowledging them. It's thanking them, blessing them. It's also kind of like that give and receive of like sending good energy and receiving good energy back. So
absolutely.
It kind of keeps the loop going. And asking for a parking space up front is super low risk because if you go there and there's no space up front, big deal, right?
Right.
I always ask for the best parking spot that for me, and it almost always works.
It leaves a little wiggle room that way too, like know. So maybe needed to walk a little bit that day. Totally. Or like maybe you need to meet somebody on the way to the store. You know what I mean? Like if you're like in the back of the lot or something like that.
Yep.
So
yeah, absolutely. I always today I went to the doctor's office and I always ask for a good parking spot, and when I got into the lot I was like, I wasn't seeing anything right away, and I was like, oh shoot. Like I wasn't like upset. I was just, oh well, not a big deal.
Totally.
And then I went down another aisle and oh my God, I got the best spot. I was facing forward towards the building.
Excellent.
So
Excellent.
close. I was like, yes.
I never think to ask that just because I never mind. I'm 6'4", I have long legs. I power walk everywhere. I never mind. You know what I
You are
mean?
so fast when you walk. Like I am out of breath when I walk with you.
I know. My boyfriend was like, we were like on a walk the other night and he was like, can you slow down? You're the only one person I've ever dated that I haven't walked as fast as. And I'm like, oh, sorry. No, like whatever. I just get going and like, I just have my momentum. So, yes. Okay. So, I have one more question for you. And I don't know if you have an answer for it, but, I want to know, so we're in the middle of like a really crazy year, super intense year. I know, right? I don't know, just a couple things, it's fine. So I want to know, I guess, what your perspective of this year is like on a spiritual level. Like, because I always think that there's a reason for everything, not on a corny level, but on an energetic level. I guess, how do you perceive like, why is this year so crazy? And kind of what's your kind of gut feeling of where you see it's going as well?
Hang on, I'm writing that down. Why is this year so crazy?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't forget.
Yep.
So I have two answers. I'll give you the first answer, and then I'll give you the answer. The second answer will answer your question. Okay. I'm just writing that down too, so I don't forget. All right. So, back in January, before coronavirus really hit the States, and it was only something that was exclusively located in China.
Mm-hmm.
What was that?
What was what?
Did you hear that buzz or that?
No.
Never mind. Wow.
All right. Okay, weird. Sorry.
Maybe I shouldn't tell the story because this is kind of serious.
You can say whatever.
You're good with it?
Whatever you want. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. If the buzz happens again, then I won't do it. Okay.
Okay.
So
okay.
We're in January. Coronavirus has only been in China. It hasn't spread across the world yet. And I think for the most part, like everybody in the world is thinking like, it'll just be in China and we'll be fine. I have a dream that Dominic and I are in this town and we are surrounded by all these people and we're waiting to go into kind of like this like banquet hall kind of facility. And so everybody's like really excited. Like everybody's so glad that they can see each other. People are hugging. They haven't seen each other in a really long time. Like they're really excited about, being close to one another, like, cause they just haven't been close in a while. And I thought that was really bizarre that we felt like we were separated for a long time. Mm-hmm. So, and I saw some of my cousins there and I saw some relatives there that I was like, oh, I'm so glad I get to see you and hug you and be with you. So then we go into the banquet hall and there are caskets and urns all over, like lining around like the entire perimeter of this room. I would say like 50 to 70 coffins and urns, probably more urns, but by each coffin and urn, there was a different like memorial setup where like, mm-hmm. how you do like picture boards and stuff like that at funerals. Like everybody had their own, like every deceased person had their own picture board set up in front of them. So you could kind of like walk through almost like this gallery and see who these people were and who they are and stuff like that. So we knew we had a couple loved ones there, but we didn't have a lot of loved ones there. We were mostly there to support everybody else in the community because there had just been so much loss. Like, and I felt like it was some sort of weird natural disaster or some sort of like tragic event had happened, and that's what brought us all together. So we were just there to support everyone else. So there's all these tables set up, and we sit down at the table, and there's all this food brought out, and we're all eating and laughing and having a great time. And like, nobody is like really sad that there's like this mass funeral. We're all just so happy that we can sit down and eat with each other and be around each other. And everybody is just really, really happy. And just like the whole theme of the dream really kind of like personally, for me, it kind of creeped me out because I was like, this is nuts.
It gives me the chills. It's creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was trying to like, and it stuck with me for so long. I'm like, what is this? Like, why would I dream about something like this? And so I wrote it down and I recorded it. And then it wasn't until I think March when the coronavirus started to get into the States, or like more into our area anyways, and they talked about, shelter in place and quarantining and stuff like that, that I finally realized like, oh fuck. Like,
yeah.
This is what my dream was about. It was a premonition. This is what it's about. This is what's happening. Lots of people are dying. We can't be around each other to have these funerals. We can't eat with one another in a public setting. We can't hug each other in a public setting. So everybody has to be distanced from each other. So it was just like, this is serious. This is what this is. And so so I'm going to kind of rant for a bit. So when I see other people in the holistic community not taking it seriously because they want so badly for this to be a hoax, they want so badly for this to not exist, it really frustrates me and angers me, because if I'm getting visions and premonitions that we need to take this seriously and they're not, then how are they separated, from their spiritual source? Not like not like I'm better, but like, are they so disconnected to not have their heart open enough to know that, sometimes you do need to take these things seriously. So
it's been a really weird, it's been really strange to see everyone's kind of individual reactions to it, that especially like with the kind of like rise of QAnon, and it was building up in the background before, and I'm like pretty open to things, obviously.
Yeah,
and
same.
I'm not necessarily anti-conspiracy theory, quote unquote, but it does. I mean, for me, QAnon is a cult, and because it separates you from your gut feelings and your intuition, and kind of alienates you from people. So it's easier for people to believe in this sort of mass web of this mass web of like, I don't know, like instead of the reality, in my opinion, of like what a horrible tragedy this is that you can't control. Because I think the QAnon thing gives you some sort of semblance of control. There's someone sort of at the top like, this is what's actually going on, and don't believe their lies, so I just, it's all so bizarre. Spooky dream. What do you think? I guess kind of back to my original question.
Yes. Like, why is this year so crazy?
Yeah, and then also kind of, have you kind of just picked up kind of where we're going as a human species? You know what I mean? Because I do think in a way like we are going to continue to be, even though we've all been quarantining and obviously kind of separate. I think also like we really have to kind of unite as a species, as like one world. And how do you kind of see our society changing? Because I see this as a very pivotal kind of transformational time. I see us as being like more connected than ever after this.
Yeah, I think that there's going to be a lot of political change as far as specifically for the United States. And I think also on a worldwide scale, I think there's going to be a lot of change. I think the pandemic has brought out a lot of holes in the system, not just for us, but for other people also, and that people are going to more strongly advocate for those changes to be put in place. I think people are now starting to see the value of certain jobs, whether it's teachers or, essential workers, people, they'll work at grocery stores or fast food and stuff like that. Like, we understand that they're more than just, I guess you would say like just a burger flipper. Like, they're more than just that. Yeah. And like, they provide a valuable service, and they deserve to be able to, afford a decent living just as much as the people that are like EMTs and stuff like that deserve higher wages for the technical work that they do. And so I think that those things are definitely coming out, but I also feel like this is the year of the great pause. And
yes, totally. That's a good word for it, I think.
yes.
Yeah.
Because for so, and this is kind of what my guides have said, like for so long, we have been trying to fight against the grain and be as fast and efficient as possible, because speed is what we like, because we like things fast. We want things now. We don't want to wait for things. Like we want it immediately. And it's not only that though, but it's like we are forcing like our kids into all these programs and things because we want to make sure that they're enriched and they have all these, these different, opportunities, whether it's, basketball or soccer or play practice or, learning an instrument and all this stuff. And I'm not saying that all of that is bad, because there are inherent good that comes from it, but there's also value in quality time within the family unit, which is something that previously we haven't spent a lot of time making an effort to do that. Right. So I feel like this has been a way to kind of stop those activities from happening and forcing people to spend more quality time within themselves and with the people that are immediately around them, to be able to kind of learn who your family is for like maybe for the first time, or maybe like reconnect on a family level. Because I guess I'm not saying this is everybody. I'm not saying that this is every single person. But I feel like that's kind of what some of this is. It's about getting everything to stop, so then you can kind of reassess and make a new norm without having all of those distractions around you, because
there's value in simplicity.
It's simplicity. Yeah, it's back to being kind of simplistic. So yeah.
Cool. All right.
And then you did ask, why is this year so crazy?
Yeah.
I think that kind of answers it, doesn't it? Like, I feel like we've been spinning our wheels just so fast for so long that Mother Earth and the spirit guides and everything were just like, y'all need to stop. Like, because, with everybody driving to work, the pollution on the environment was killing it. And so now it's like to force everybody to stay at home and to work from home. The earth is finally getting a chance to breathe and to have, to regenerate. And not only that, but employers are seeing that, oh, you can do your job from home and we can help the environment at the same time, because the excess there is, it's not such a strain on the environment. And so there's stuff like that I see happening. And I feel like it's part of the great pause. That's what I like. That's what I like calling it.
I remember when I thought like earlier in the year, I'm like, oh, when things go back to normal later in the year, like, well, it's later in the year. So I just don't see nothing is ever going to go back to the way it was. And I don't think it really should,
No, I think the benefits that we've gained during this time frame are going to stick around for a while, and a lot of the negative that we experienced before all of this will kind of go away, because I think we're kind of like rebuilding a new structure culturally, and I think that's what a lot of this was about, is just the restructuring of that culture. I just remember telling myself, like, at the beginning of all this, that a lot of people have to like have their birthdays alone and not be with people, and that's been one of the things that's kind of difficult for some people. And I kept telling myself, like, oh, it'll be over by September, I'll be able to have a birthday party.
Right. Totally. I know.
And we're in August, and
I was planning on going to a wedding in October, and I'm like, oh, it's so far away, like it'll be fine. And I'm like, especially because I just with the astrology in September and the numbers in September, I do feel like that there is really, really tense energy still kind of upcoming. And, you know, and like, obviously not everything is set in stone, but like the energy doesn't lie. There is something, there's just so many things, so many different levels. I think that's like an entirely different conversation, but I do, I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just like kind of looking ahead and I'm like, I don't know if I should be going to this wedding, you know? So
Yeah.
we'll see. We will see.
We'll see.
Yeah. So, anywho, thank you so much for coming by, Ari. This was fun.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. All right. Hold on one second. Okay, so Ari, let people know how they can find you if they want to book, because you are doing sessions over Zoom or just kind of like video and phone, right?
Just phone, no Zoom, because I think people get self-conscious when they're on video. So
sure. Totally.
Unless somebody specifically requests Zoom, then I'll do Zoom, but for the most part, it's just over the phone. But you can find me and I don't know if this is like backwards for you.
I think no, it's actually it's facing forward. You can see right there, Ari Nicole Psychic Medium, facebook.com/Ari Nicole Medium. That's kind of the primary place you will find you is on Facebook, correct?
Yep. Primary place is Facebook. Just send me a message on my business page on Facebook. I will get to you. I wouldn't say like immediately, but pretty close to immediately. And
Cool.
then my office hours are Monday through Friday from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Central Time. And yeah, I'm trying to say, I was gonna say, and I can't wait to connect with your spirits, like something like that.
Totally.
But I really, I'm really flexible with times and yeah, I just don't take same day appointments. So don't contact me today and expect to have an appointment today, because I have to clear my space. I have to prepare. Like there's a ritual. So.
Totally. I also like to know what my plans are for that day. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm the same way generally. So, and I will have Ari, and I'll have Ari's information in the episode info as well, wherever you're listening to this podcast or watching this video. So thanks for watching. Again, my name is Alexander Creek. If you want to book a session with me, my information is below as well. Make sure to subscribe to my channel, subscribe to this podcast, again, wherever you are listening to it. And thanks so much, everybody. And Ari, I'll have to have you back, yeah?
Yeah, you too. Love you so much.
Okay, love you. All right, bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.